Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. Oh my gosh, look at that panel of Batman. You have the absolute, you have the deluxe. DC Comics firing on all cylinders. One of my most anticipated omnibus releases of the year is finally here. I am the Uncanny Omar. You are watching Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today it gives me great honor to talk about Shade, the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and Chris Bachalo Omnibus, Volume 1 from DC Comics. So let's talk about how crazy and weird this amazing series is. And welcome back, everybody. So this is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. As a matter of fact, when I first saw it in the catalog, I got really excited that we're going to include, I think it was like the first 50 issues. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And Volume 2 would only be about 27 plus a couple of miniseries or something. But anyway, they have since changed it and it's made it a little bit smaller, but understandably so. Shade, the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and Chris Bachalo Omnibus. And if you don't like the way I say Bachalo, you can blame my buddy Curtis. He's the one that taught me how to pronounce it. Mark Pennington and Danielle Vozo down here. Volume 1. Love seeing that. The DC logo. Surprisingly, they're going back to Black Label instead of Vertigo. I'm surprised since we got Vertigo coming back to DC, the actual imprint, they didn't use Vertigo for this. Because this, well, it didn't start off as Vertigo. So maybe that's why. It started off as DC. But then again, so did Hellblazer. Anyway, what the hell am I saying? This image right here from one of the covers by Brendan McCarthy. And then the spine right here, Shade, the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and Chris Bachalo, Omnibus Volume 1, and this image right here by Chris Bachalo. And then the back of the book right here. I don't know if it's doing it any justice. I don't think me describing what the stories are about are going to do it any justice, but I'm going to try my best. It is for mature readers. It doesn't state that in the books, but this is rated mature. It did turn into a Vertigo title. Let's look at the design, actually, underneath the dust jacket. Let's look at the flaps. So over here, more Bachalo artwork. You can see what his early artwork looked like, and a little bit more later down the road. And then this madness, or perhaps the madness stream, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a few. All right, we are going to open this book up and talk about the type of stories found in here and check out this artwork, and you're going to see the evolution. I love books like this, where you see the early works of somebody, and then towards the end, you'll see what their art turned into. I love the evolution of an artist, and we get to see it all happen in one book. And then see if there's anything extra in the back. All right, let's go ahead and get this omnibus open. You have that pattern right there that you might find in his coat later on. And this is probably the way most people are familiar with the character of Shade. Rack Shade at that. We'll explain a little bit about what that means later. But it's not the way that he first appears. So Shade, the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and Chris Bachalo, Omnibus Volume 1. Peter Milligan being the writer, but Chris Bachalo is joined by other creators such as the legendary Colleen Doran. You have Bill Jaska, Brendan McCarthy, who we saw doing a cover, Peter Gross, Jander Seema, and others. And then over here, your inkers, Mark Pennington, of course, doing the majority of the inks, Rick Bryant, and Peter Gross, Pablo Marcos. Colorist Danielle Vozo. And then your lettering by Todd Klein and Brendan McCarthy doing the collection cover right there. Table of contents, what is collected in here? Unless otherwise noted, all stories written by Peter Milligan, penciled by Chris Bachalo, inked by Mark Pennington, colored by Daniel Vosso, and lettered by Todd Klein. And they do tell you when the pencils are by Brian Talbot or Brendan McCarthy, when somebody comes in and does a fill-in issue. You do have an introduction here by none other than Peter Milligan. This doesn't really spoil anything. This kind of gives you an idea of where some of the characters came from, what inspired him to write the stories about, you know, what I guess some would say an LSD trip. But then again, I've heard the same of Steve Ditko's art on Doctor Strange. And the man always swore that he never did any kind of drugs. He was just that talented. Okay, let's talk about what's collected in here first, and then we'll move on. Collected in here is Shade, the Changing Man, 1 through 37. I've seen some misinformation out there saying that this only collects the first 27 issues. It does not. It collects the first 37 issues. The book does have 992 pages and retails for $125. I have to give the pitch of this. So spoilers going into this, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of Shade. It could mean, and you'll know what I'm talking about when I say what it could mean here in a little bit. All right, so mention spoilers. At the very beginning, we are introduced to this young lady. This is our main character. This is Kathy. We're going to be seeing things through Kathy's eyes. Kathy George is just a young girl in her 20s, and she's coming back home. And she's bringing her boyfriend with her, this guy named Roger. And there's all these things, all these creatures that are appearing, and you're like, wait, is she seeing this? Is this a dream? Is it a nightmare? What's going on? Things will be explained as the story progresses. Now, mature content, as I mentioned, because you're going to see some horrible imagery through here. Believe it or not, this is some early Chris Bachalo. And she goes in there, they stop on the side of the road to make love, or not on the side, they go to like some kind of farm out there in the middle of nowhere. So they're a little late getting to her parents' house. She walks in and she immediately smells the blood and sees a horrific image of this guy just stabbing away at her mom and had killed her dad already. So we'll come back to this guy in a second. Roger steps in to try to help out. Now, what ends up happening is something horrific. He was joking about, this interracial relationship and what it can mean to her parents once they're introduced to him. And what ends up happening is he gets shot by the police, thinking that he's the one that was harming the family. And unfortunately, he dies. He gets shot in the head, dies. Meanwhile, the guy that actually killed her family, her mom and dad, is this guy right here. This is Troy Grenzer. And he, believe it or not, will become a huge part of the story. She is stuck in an institution at a hospital where she has dreams and nightmares and fantasies about killing this character, Grenzer. And the money eventually runs out from her mom and dad, so she travels. And she does want to see the execution. So he is found guilty, of course, of murder. And Troy Grenzer is sentenced to die by chair. So electrocution, that's right. Now, this is when things get a little bit nuts. And that's an understatement. As she's sitting outside just waiting for some kind of sign, waiting for something to happen, he's over here just making jokes, like saying, okay, sure, we've been over this. I'm not afraid of a little electrocution. He's lost his damn mind. And he even starts thinking that he has like supernatural powers, that he might have seen God. Doesn't matter. God has lost his damn mind. Then he starts having remorse. He's like, wait, I changed my mind. Maybe I'm not ready for the chair. And he starts praying to God. Right, like something weird happening here. Now, as soon as the electrocution happens, something happens to his body where a bunch of lights, a bunch of images just come to him and her. She is seeing all these things. So she thinks it's kind of like, it's sort of like a reaction to the electrocution happening in the prison. But it's not. Because what ends up happening is she starts seeing this thing come to life. And then he stands up, the guy, Troy Grenzer, the guy that murdered her mom and dad and is responsible for Roger, her boyfriend's death, says, hey, you got to get me out of here. And he tries to explain to her that he's not really Troy Grenzer. He doesn't remember much of who he is, but he wants to be called Shade. So she kind of trusts him at first. She's a little confused. She doesn't know what's going on. And she's like, okay, I'm going to bring this guy with me and I'm going to kill him. So they go to a hotel. Meanwhile, across America, things are happening in mental institutions. You have people that are seeing things or could really be turning into things. Like, for example, this guy that's leaving a note behind, or I'm sorry, a recording behind. This is back in the 90s, by the way. I think it was 1990 when this series started, if I'm not mistaken. His legs are turning into worms. So weird things are happening out there. Crazy things are happening out there. And she eventually finds a hotel room where she is going to end up taking his life for the murder of her parents. She's going to take justice into her own hands. Meanwhile, we have a couple of maybe detectives, maybe something else going on, of Connor and Detective, what is his name? Stringer, Mr. Stringer. They're looking for him. And they're noticing a bunch of different things that are happening that aren't normal. And something is going on here. Something supernatural, perhaps, that is out of their jurisdiction. It's out of their hands almost. So as she tries to kill him, he explains to her that not everything seems as it is. Like, she sees visions of her mom and dad, she sees visions of Roger, and then she sees visions of course, Grenzer here, who makes her relive that day of seeing her mom and dad get killed. But as it turns out, Shade explains to her that he was sent here to Earth, that he took on the body of Troy Grenzer. He comes from a place called Meta, and he is here to stop something, but he doesn't know what yet. So that's the first issue. It is weird and confusing, but not as confusing as the next story arc with Who Shot JR. This is about a man that is completely obsessed with the assassination of President Kennedy, and long before not long before, there's always been conspiracy theorists out there, but long before the internet and social media, right, where people are sharing their opinions, this guy believes something deeper and darker is going on with the assassination of JFK and gets obsessed. So the story of both Kathy and Shade kind of, they intertwine with this story, and it's all part of something else that Milligan is building to. And believe it or not, it all kind of gets yes, you are going to see a JFK Sphinx here, and it all ties it in together. This story goes for a couple of issues, and you start seeing this relationship build before your eyes. You start seeing this relationship of Shade and Kathy, because she doesn't know what to make of him first, right? Like, first she's like, this guy's wearing the face of my parents' killers, but he's not. He's a creature from another world. Who exactly is he? And meanwhile, Shade is still looking like Troy, but things are about to change. I think it happens actually in the 5th issue, if I'm not mistaken, when he ends up going back to the Meta. Here in the Meta is where he starts getting explanations. He starts seeing what really is what. And as it turns out, he is an alien poet from the planet Meta. His name is Rack Shade. And he is recruited, quote unquote, by the Change Master Wiser to become a changing man. So I say recruited because as you read this, you're going to find out, oh, that wasn't really, like, he did not volunteer. And you'll see when you read this what really is happening. So he gets recruited to come to Earth to go and try to find this thing called the American Scream. So this first, honestly, it goes over like the first 19 issues, if I'm not mistaken, that he is after something called the American Dream, or Scream, which is a personification of all the madness that lies out there. And he does, when he comes back from the Meta, he does change. Like, his hair starts changing, and he gets that coat that you saw on the spine. And that's the way he looks from now on. So he looks a little bit different. It's easier for Kathy to keep an eye on him. Now, eventually, they are going to meet other people, other supernatural beings through here. The American Scream story goes through Hollywood, and it talks about the deception of Hollywood and what it could really mean. And I think that's what a lot of people really enjoy about this, right? You have a simple story of Shade, who's an alien, who's tricked into coming here, and he's trapped here, and he maybe starts possessing people, maybe part of him dies every time there's a possession. And what happened to Troy Grenzer, right? Like, the serial killer that was about to be executed. Well, he still plays a part in this, almost becoming like a subconscious, if you will, and sometimes can take over the body of Rack Shade. And it becomes really creepy, especially when, well, Kathy starts developing feelings for him because they've been together for so long. So this friendship is formed out of this horrible, horrible travesty that happened. And the story really, every issue just touches upon cults, it touches upon racism, conspiracy theories, as we talked about, sexual abuse, and mental health. It's just a phenomenal story that was way ahead of its time. And I will be 100% honest with you. Oh, this is the introduction of Lenny. I love that Lenny, of all the three main characters, to me, she's always been the third main character. She's my favorite. I love Lenny Shapiro. She is such an awesome, interesting character, but you don't really get to see it until like 2/3 of the book. What the hell was I saying? My introduction to this, why I went and sought out back issues of Shade, was because I was obsessed with Chris Bachalo. I loved his artwork in Death. I loved his artwork in Generation X. And I remember asking the comic book store with my parents, where did we go? We ended up going to like Peoria, Illinois, visiting some family. And we went to some local comic book stores. And everywhere I'd be like, do you have anything by Chris Bachalo? And they were like, you ever heard of Shade the Changing Man? I cannot remember this story. It was an older gentleman, and there was no organization. It was comics just stacked on top of comics, and it was just having to dig through there. And I'm like, no, what the hell is Shade the Changing Man? And he was like, well, it's like Sandman and Swamp Thing. It was like the British invasion of writers. This guy named Peter Milligan. And I was like, okay, yeah, dude, I love both of those books. So that's when I started just getting random issues. And and of course the random issues that I ended up getting were not even drawn by Chris Bachalo. I think one of them was actually drawn by Colleen Doran. But then I ended up getting a lot. And then I found a huge stack so cheap. I think they were like $0.25 each. And I got all the way to like issue 55, and then I ended up like just filling in those gaps by just ordering online when I got older. And because there were no collected editions of the stuff. The collected editions, I think, only lasted 2 or 3 volumes. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it even made it into the 20s. But that was my introduction to this. And I was lost. I was confused. But it did have that... like, it reminded me of the things that I loved about Sandman, that not everything is as it seems, that not everything has to be explained to me, that madness is out there, and it is up to this 3 people to try to fix things and try to remember who they are and what makes them tick. And you're going to see a lot of different things in here that happen to these main characters. There are going to be some deaths and resurrections, and as a matter of fact, there is this way ahead of its time issue. This is the big battle. Oh, this is like a Western, if I'm not mistaken, like where he takes on the American Scream. And this is when you find out everything that has been going on behind the scenes, like why he was sent to Earth. This issue right here is about this guy right here that's obsessed with finding the Messiah during Christmas time. So it's got like this Christmas frame, but there's a little bit of twist as to why he's obsessed. And this is when Kathy went to be with her Uncle Ted for a while. I think it was in Montana, and he kind of takes a little bit of a road trip. We've seen hippies, we've seen him being taken over by the character of Troy, and then he ends up actually developing this alter ego, this character named Hades, who kind of makes him like seek out these desires and like these humanistic desires, and he makes for such an interesting kind of like id ego and id super ego. That kind of story is what you're going to be seeing, and something that I didn't expect, right? This is an awesome story that I remember reading for the first time, where I thought it was a time travel story where Rack ends up like going to the future, and Kathy is like 70-something years old. She looks rough, by the way, but that's farm life for you. But there is a story here that I thought was way ahead of its time, and it is this story right here. It is Colleen Doran actually drawing these issues, and it is about Miriam and Naomi, who are these twins. And Shade, because he is a changing man, they even I believe they changed the cover to the changing woman. Yeah. Yes. So something happened in the previous arc that makes him change, and you'll see him change again and again. But this time around, he changes into this woman who has lost her twin, and now she's trying to find who the killer is or what happened to her sister, her twin sister. And it makes for an amazing, way ahead of its time story about identity and trying to find your place in the world. And he freaks out, right? Because he's like, am I supposed to be changing? What the hell is going on? My real body's in the meta. So it's also about rebirth, because at one time they lose him. Now, this is when Chris Bachalo comes back, and you can see the difference here. Like this art style, this is like something you're probably familiar with from Sandman or Death, to like this art right here. There's almost like Hellblazer type of artwork, which I'm sure is what they were going for. Swamp Thing type of artwork, Bill Sienkiewicz type of artwork, to this art right here. Now, of course, the inker is Rick Bryant here. But that's what these are, angel stories right here. That's the type of stories you are going to find here. What's really amazing, in the introduction, Peter Milligan always says that this character was created by Steve Ditko. So when I said, like, trippy art, like Steve Ditko, people accusing him of taking LSD and drugs, and he was like, I never did any of that. I'm just damn talented. And he was. The character of Shade, the Changing Man, was created by Steve Ditko. The meta is borrowed from that, and Rack Shade. It's a lot different, though. It's kind of like what Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing, of course, and then Neil Gaiman did with Sandman. There were Golden Age characters, but this is so, well, not Swamp Thing, and Silver Age for Steve Ditko's Shade the Changing Man. But this was like a reimagining of that character, and took the character and went in a completely different direction. And I want to say, yeah, they stopped with issue 37, and I don't, this might be the last issue. By the way, the issue numbers are here. They're intact. And then on the back, you actually get the full image for every issue. Every issue. Sometimes it looks a little bit different, too. Sometimes the colors look a little bit different. I thought that was cool. That's a nice extra that they did not keep for the back. So maybe, I don't think Bachalo went all the way to issue 40. I think that might be his final issue. Or it could be the next issue. Let's see. So 2 pages in the back for biographies, and then your end sheets. Let's look at the binding. 992 pages, and it is sewn binding. And the book itself is $125. When people ask me my opinion about this series, when people ask, what do I think? I'm excited for it, right? But I also realize it's not for everybody. And even the way that I described it, like, I don't think it does it justice. Just like you can't really describe things in Alan Moore's Swamp Thing or Neil Gaiman's Sandman. They're just there. And it's an experience. And that's what this is. To me, it was an experience. It wasn't just reading about Rackshade and Kathy and Lenny. It was being there with these characters on this weird and trippy road trip that sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't understand what the hell's going on. But I'm in. For most people, I think you'll get an idea of how the story is going to be within the first 7 issues. Like, it's that kind of story throughout the whole books, and I'm assuming in Volume 2. And Volume 2 is going to have the really good stories, too. But I will say, the stories do get better. At first, you know, it's much like, to me, like the first 10 issues of Sandman. The authors are still trying to find their voices, like for the characters, what story they're trying to tell, what point they're trying to make. Where later on, they are comfortable with these characters. They are their creation, and now they're letting you in behind the door so you can see these type of stories that are in their head. And I think, to me, like, don't judge it too harsh on those first few issues. If those first few issues hook you, then keep reading. And that is just my honest opinion, because people have asked me, like, what do I think of the series? I think it's phenomenal. I also realize it's not for everybody, because these type of stories aren't for everybody. But that is it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code NEARMINTCONDITION at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. In the comments down below, let me know if you've never read it and what I showed you and I've talked about. I swear I'm not doing it justice. It is so much wilder, crazier, and amazing than what I am describing. But if you've not read it, you're going into it completely blind and you just wanted to see what the art looks like, let me know if you're picking it up. And if you've been waiting for this book like I have, and hopefully we'll get the series wrapped up in a second volume, plus all the other stuff Peter Milligan did right afterwards that features the character of Shade. If you enjoyed this video, please think about subscribing if you haven't subscribed and you watched all the way to the end. Thank you for that. Thank you for all of you that have watched all the way to the end. We do have a Patreon and spread shop, and thank you so much to our patrons. That does help with our YouTube channel. But at this time, I just want to remind everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, stay weird. Much love.